Welcome to Infinite Leaders Live, the podcast that shares real life lessons from real life people. As ever, we're incredibly fortunate to speak to people from all over the world in inspirational positions and roles in companies, organizations, education establishments. And we're delighted that you've chosen to join us to listen, to learn and share. As usual, I'm joined by my pal, Alan. How are you doing, Alan?
Yeah, good, Lewis. Thanks a lot there. And proud again to wear our Tsunami products. Tsunami is the #1 choice for eco sportswear. And I'm really excited by today's guest. He was a hero of mine when I was growing up in Sheffield, and he will certainly talk about the things you don't get taught at university or on any courses.
Yeah, we are excited and we love your feedback as ever. We'd really like your feedback for this one. Please get in touch. You can find us on Instagram, YouTube. We're on Twitter as well and theinfinitelearners.com. Our tagline, be better educators, be better humans. And we hope today's episode will allow you to move towards that. Let's get stuck in now.
Yeah, get your pens and paper ready, guys. There's going to be some gems of wisdom coming out of the show today. Now, Bob Booker is an ex-professional footballer who played for Brentford and Sheffield United before becoming assistant manager at Brighton and now works as a driving instructor. Bob worked hard, gave his all, played wherever he was asked without complaint. He wore every shirt apart from the goalkeepers and was rewarded by playing or coaching in all 4 divisions of the English Football League. Bob was a crucial part of teams, either as a player or a coach, and he celebrated 6 promotions but suffered 3 relegations. Perhaps most importantly, no one who has ever met Bob has a bad word to say about him. He's still revered at all 3 clubs he was associated with and remains a particular cult hero at my own club, Sheffield United. Bob Booker, welcome to the show and tell us about that chant that is the title of your book.
Well, first and foremost, guys, I'd like to say I've never been introduced like that before. That was an introduction I've never had. That's unbelievable. It makes me sound like the king.
You are to us, Bob.
Okay. It's a pleasure to be with you guys and, to speak to you and see you over there in sunnier climates. It's not too bad here today in Henfield near Brighton. So, yeah, very, very pleased to chat to you. Yeah, I mean, like you say, going on to where the ooh-ah originally come from, I've just said cheerio to Mrs. Ooh-ah, who took the dogs out for a nice stroll this morning. It just sort of raised its head, and I think he was there, Alan, to be fair, at the Mansfield game.
Yeah.
I mean, I had played about 10 games for the Blades coming up from Brentford, and it was a particularly difficult time. I wasn't really performing. I was, my years were clocking on. I had a dodgy knee. Harry still brought me up there, and it was a difficult first 10 games where the crowd must have thought, what have we got here? A 32-year-old crop who can't run around, can't pass, can't head, can't score. So it was a frustrating time, but the manager stuck by me. You're talking about leaders. He was a leader. And he stuck by me and kept me going. I think as a player, as a professional, if you're a goal scorer or goalkeeper or any player at some stage, you're going through sort of some bad form, which I was. But I was, my dad always told me, you keep going, son. You don't give up. You keep going. Even when times are bad, you come through the other side. And I think on that wet and rainy night at Mansfield, for whatever reason, it just seemed to click. I got up with the pace of the game. I started winning headers. I started winning tackles. You could start hearing my name started to be sung in certain quarters of that crowd that we took. And that's where I first really heard the UR chant, which Eric Cantona tries to claim, but I'm having none of it. So it is officially my title, and I'm very proud of it. And it stuck with me while I was at Sheffield United, and it stuck with me through my career now. I signed my cards UR, I named my book UR. It's just something that, my friends call me UR. It's just weird, really. So I'm very proud of it, and I'm glad that it's just, it stayed the cause. But it all started on that night, as you said. It just changed for me that night. Things got better, and I started to push on in that team, as a regular player, and kept going. And fair play to the manager for keeping me in. I did go and speak to him a few times and said, Harry, this is not working. I'm not doing what I should be doing, what you're asking. And he said, no, you will do, because I was used to playing a slightly different type of football at Brentford under Steve Perriman, as you can imagine. And with Harry's fast and forward play, it was a completely different concept for me. So it took a while for me to get up to speed, but I got there in the end.
Good man. And 10 games in for the crowd to be singing your name is is some claim to fame. And I know that it was 3 years at Bramall Lane, I think you had, and the impact that you made with the fans was massive, you know, and that song is still renowned. It's known. Bob Booker is a name that you can speak to any Blade about, and they'll know exactly who that person is that they're talking about. Now, tell us how you made that impact in that 3 years. How did you move up to Sheffield? How did that come about? And how did you have that kind of attitude to really go on at 32 years old and be such a hero at a club like Sheffield United?
Well, like you said, it was a bit of an impact in 3 years. What had happened, you know, normally, I mean, I was at Brentford for over 10 years as a player. I did have a couple of songs down there, but they weren't quite so prominent as who are. But I mean, I was just sort of thinking about retiring. I've got to be honest. I'd had a bad knee operation in 1986. It's taken its toll. I was coming to the end. I wasn't really getting in the team. I played against Sheffield United sort of about 3 weeks before I finally come up, and I knew Dave Bassett and I knew Derek French because we both played for the same team, a local team called Bedman Social, where Vinny played in the reserves and I was in the first team because Vinny was a little bit younger than me, Vinny Jones. But I played in that game, and I remember the Blades bringing down at least 3,500, 4,000 supporters because you was flying high at the top of the old division. And I got taken off in that game. I was completely out of it. I think it was Simon Webster and, well, you know, unfortunately, the lad I replaced, Simon Webster and Mark Todd, centre midfield. And I played centre midfield and got absolutely trounced. You know, they killed me. I was nowhere near. We couldn't keep up with the team, you know, the way that Sheffield were playing and how we had them going. So I travelled home with Derek French that night, because we both lived in Watford. And I said to him, blimey, you know, what a team you got there. Dean and Nagana. You had Bryson and Roberts. You know, you had a solid back four with Chrissy Wilder, Pikey, Stancliffe. It was a formidable team. It really was powerful. He said, yeah, Harry's really got them going. And that was it. So I had the weekend at home, and then the following week on a Sunday morning, Derek French rang me and said, Harry would like to see you, have a chat with you. And I said, what about? Does he want me to do some scouting or something? What's he after? He said, no, he's thinking of bringing you up, you know, to play. And I said, what, on loan or whatever? He said, we just want to have a chat with you. Well, I just couldn't believe what I was hearing, really, because I was off the radar. You know, I was about to pack up. So I went and saw Steve Perman that morning on a Monday and said, Dave Bassett's interested in having a chat with me. Would you mind if I go up and have a chat with him? And he said, no, you know, feel free, Bob. You know, you're not going to lose nothing. You're not in my plans. You know, you're 32. I'm looking to bring other players in, but he was quite honest about it. So me and my dad jumped in. We managed to put a petrol in my little Fiesta, and we jumped on the M1 and turned up at Bramall Lane on a Wednesday morning to see Harry. And just driving into that car park, as you well know, you know, it was, you know, no disrespect to Brentford, it was a great football club, but driving in there, it's, you know, the old butterflies are going a little bit, and I wasn't really expecting what was coming, really. And then I got to reception. You might have heard of Mick Rooker, God bless him, he's retired now. He come and met me and took me through the offices, and I could see all these people looking at me thinking, who the bloody hell's that? You know. And then Harry called me in. So I went into his office. My dad waited outside and just had a chat with him. He had his legs up on the table, and we spoke about football. And he was looking to replace Simon Webster, who broke his leg, unfortunately. And I said, Harry, I've hardly played. You know, my knee's struggling. He said, well, don't worry about your knee. We'll get your knee sorted. Frenchie will sort it out. We'll get you some injections, and you can have a one-to-one. You can have a one-to-one physio. You know, and I said, okay, can my dad come and have a chat? So my dad come and have a chat, and we sat there. And at that time, I was on probably about £250 a week, which you probably wouldn't believe, £300 a week at Brentford. And Harry read out the contract, and it was almost trebling my wages. And they was offering me, you know, sort of a signing on fee, which I'd never had. They said they'd sort me out with my digs, you know, and get me a sponsored car. And it was just mind blowing, really, from where I'd been. So I said, can I have a chat with my dad about this outside? Because I didn't have an agent then, you know. You didn't need an agent, you know, if you couldn't decide what you wanted to get out of a football club or what you wanted to accept. I mean, I think I'd already made my mind up once he read the contract out, to be honest with you. He said, yeah, go and have a chat, but there's no more money. I said, no, I just want to have a chat with my dad. I can't get my head around it, you know. 1 minute I'm just about to retire and finish, and now I'm being offered a contract at Sheffield United. So we walked along the tunnel, me and my dad, and we walked down the steps and we saw the Blade sign. And it's making the back of my neck go up now, lads, to be fair. It's giving me a bit of a shiver, a bit of a lump in my throat. And we walked out onto the hallowed turf. We looked at the cop and we just stood there in silence, me and my dad. And then it was a bit like fools and horses, I've got to be honest. We looked at each other and my dad sort of started to well up and I started to well up. And we just had a cuddle in a moment. And he said, listen, son, you've been in the lower leagues all your life, 10, 11, 12 years, you know, go and sign that contract and go for it. So we went back into the office. I said, where's the pen, Harry? He said, brilliant. So I signed the contract. I hadn't even told my wife what I'd done. My first wife, by the way. I liked it so much, I thought I'd have another go at it. So we drove back to Watford. Rang my wife on the way and said, I'm moving, you know, going to go and play for Sheffield United. Got some bits together, came back up on the Thursday, played in the reserves Thursday night, and then made my debut on the Saturday against Bristol City. So yeah, it was a bit of a whirlwind sort of, you know, education really on signing, because I've been at Brentford all my life since 1979. So, and the next minute I'm at this massive football club and ready for the journey really.
I love that, Bob. Love it. Lump in your throat, lump in mine too. Unbelievable.
Yeah, it really was. Al. It was, you know, it's what dreams are made of, really. You know, when you don't expect something like that coming, and you know, so there wasn't. I say there wasn't a lot of pressure. There was quite a bit of pressure. It was a strange decision, but it's one of those you just tend to go for it, don't you? And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. And fortunately for me, it did work out. I mean, it took a bit of time, but you know, we got there in the end.
It's those seminal moments, Bob, and lots of our guests on this podcast talk about those seminal moments in your life that you go one way or the other, and that's clearly one of them for you. I'm going to take you back to that Tuesday night at Mansfield, and I remember finishing school, and we piled into the back of a transit van as you would do in them days. I don't know, some guy I don't even know was driving. My dad's in front. I'm in back with old lads from school. There's all sorts going in the back of the van. Smoke, you couldn't even see for smoke, let's just say. And we get down there and then all the dads are on it at the pub. And we go to that night and it's got to be one of the coldest nights I've ever watched football at. It was sleet, it was rain, it was snow, it was brutal. And that was another seminal moment, like you say, in your Sheffield United career, because that's when you became alive and as a Blade and as a fan. That's when we saw you. That's when we're like, oh, wow, he's one of us. And that's when the chant started. So just to link, how important is that sense of belonging, Bob, where you feel really part of something special?
Well, every player likes that. I mean, it happened to me twice. You know, when I went to Brentford, I was inexperienced. I'd just signed from a non-league team, you know, sort of 2 men and a dog watching, to playing straight into Division 3. So it was a massive step up for me, and I really struggled at Brentford. It was just like deja vu coming to Sheffield. You know, I was going from Brentford to Sheffield and making that big step as well. Not as in division so much, but as in football status and football ground and stadium. So it was a massive step up, and it does affect you. You know, when your parents are sitting in the crowd, and you know you've got all that abuse going around you. And I used to drive home in the car and listen to praise and grumble. And I don't know why I did, but, you know, people were actually saying, Booker's useless. What's he doing? He can't run. He can't get around the pitch. He's too old, you know. And I think you either fall by the wayside or you grab it and you grit your teeth. And I've never been the world's, and I never would have been the world's greatest footballer. I wasn't a Tony Curry. I wasn't a Brian Deane. I wasn't a Tony Garner. And I think that's where instantly after that Mansfield game, I got the connection from the crowd, because I think they realised that when they knew a little bit about me, I was a working class guy. I worked in a factory from 8 a.m. till 5:30 at night. I didn't have it on a plate. I didn't come through the apprenticeship scheme and everything done for me. I worked my bollocks off in a factory and just enjoying Saturday football. And then the chance came along. And like I said to you earlier, you know, about you guys being over there, when the chance comes, you have to take it. And you know, I recognise that the general Sheffield United supporter, you know, he works his bollocks off all week, whatever he does, whether it's a bus driver, whether he's in an office, whatever he's doing, whether he's a builder. Come Friday night, he has a few beers, down the lane on a Saturday, watch the game, let off steam, You know, Sunday morning, get up, have a game of football Sunday morning for the Bradway, go down a pub, go down to the local social club Sunday afternoon, have your Sunday dinner, fall asleep, back to work Monday. And that's what that's what I did.
You just described my dad's life.
Well,
What about yours, Lewis?
But,
Same
I
story.
I can relate to that. And I think the modern day footballer now wouldn't have a clue what some people do for a job and how it affects them, because it's just put on a plate for them. You know, everything's there, done for you. You know, you don't have to want for anything. You're fed, you're watered, you travel the world, you're looked after. And it's a million miles away to what it was when we was in the game. That's why I think when you speak, like you guys speak to a lot of ex-players from that era, they probably speak pretty similar to me, because that's what we did. That's how it was. And I think we're very proud of being in that era as a professional footballer through the 70s and 80s and 90s.
Yeah, we spoke to Baz Rathbone a couple of months ago. He used to play at Blackburn, and he talked about the dressing rooms being tough and such, and he talked about feeling a real imposter syndrome that like you've just described there, where you're like, hang on a minute, how am I at Sheffield United, having come from Brentford, being on the verge of retirement? Did you have a little bit of self-doubt as you came up to Bramall Lane, and what did you do to try and ease that? What did you do to try and make yourself feel a little bit more like you were at a place where you could make some progress and you did deserve to be there, and you had, you know, worked your socks off to get there?
Well, I shit myself my first day. going into that dressing room, I was a little bit lucky again, like you say, right time. I knew a few of the players from down south. I knew, I knew Stancliffe because I played against him quite a bit. I knew Francis Joseph. I knew Simon Tracy from Wimbledon, and a couple. I knew Wally Downs. So I had a little bit of insight to some of the lads there, and Frenchie was there, so I didn't feel too far out of it going into that dressing room. And when I walked in, and a lot of them turned around and they said, "Oh, bloody hell, look, what's he doing here?" And I think it was Paul Stancliffe. He said, "What are you doing?" He said, "You're older than me." And I came back with, "Yeah, but I can score more goals than you, Stan." And that sort of broke the ice a little bit, like, with the rest of the lads. But they was really good. And my first morning, you're always a little bit wary, what it's going to be the first morning's training. And to be fair to Chrissy Wilder, he sort of tagged to me straight away. It was great, Chris. He come up and said, "Listen, I'm driving up to the training ground. Would you like to jump in the car with us?" And so it was me, him, and Toddy jumped in Chris's car, and off we went to my first training session. And I couldn't trap a bag of cement that morning. I was so nervous. I mean, I shouldn't have been. I played over 350 games. You'd think you'd just drop into it, but I suppose it's the same as going for any new job. You're a little bit apprehensive. But they made me great, and it was a very tough dressing room. You know what I mean by that. There was a lot of banter. There was a lot of fierce banter. And if you can't take that, you got no chance. And it was a very volatile dressing room, full of characters, And I think Harry Bassett done a masterclass by mixing the Southerners with the Northerners. You had, Wardy, Dane Whitehouse, Billy Whitehurst, Chrissy Wilder, Dane Mitch Ward, and then you had Trace, Gannon, myself. So we had that banter, that North versus South. I mean, most Friday mornings was North versus South, five-a-side, which you would never get today. And Jeff Taylor would blow the whistle 7 minutes each way, and we'd all kick 3 bags of shit out of each other. And that was on a Friday morning. If you got injured, you didn't play. So, but that's what we did in them days. That's how it was. I mean, you wouldn't have any contact on a Friday morning now in the Premier League, would you? But that was us. That's the way we played hard and we worked hard. So fantastic crowd, and fantastic group of players, and they made it very, very not easy for me, but they made me very, very welcome. And as did all the staff. Mick Rooker particularly, because he took me around. When I was living up there and I wasn't at home, he took me around the pubs and the clubs. Well, not drinking, obviously, too much, not after a Wednesday, but he took me around the pubs and clubs and the shops, and I did signing sessions. So he got my face around, really, and took me to places like that, GT Sports, and do little photo sessions, which I find quite not easy, but I think it's part of a professional footballer's job, sign some autographs and bits and pieces. So that really helped as well. So Mick Rooker was great for me because he really got me around the city. And put my face about and looked after me.
You mentioned there, Bob, about the banter. Tell us a bit more about the sort of dressing room atmosphere and how bad it was, but also maybe how good it was as well. Because there's a fine line, isn't there? Like you've already alluded to. It was fierce, it was cutthroat, but it was done in a supportive way. Would that be right? And how fierce did it get, and how supportive was it for you?
Well, like I said, some of the abuse, they could be slaughtering your mum or your sister. Many of the players said they wanted to shag my sister, or they had shagged my sister, which that can really affect some people. Do you know what I mean? In my opinion, good luck to them. But no, it can. But things they used to shut the apprentices in the skips and shut the lid, like they'd be stuck in there for an hour, because they hadn't cleaned their boots, or, all sorts could happen. We was up at the training ground one winter when it was snowing, and we had a snowball fight, and the north versus the south, and I got stripped bollock naked in the snow. They left me with my slip and a pair of boots, and I had to make my way back to the training ground because they took all my training kit. It's ruthless. So it was good. I think Harry done brilliant there, because that's what a dressing room should be like.
You talk about Harry there really fondly, Bob, and we all got great memories of Harry Bassett. To those that don't know who he is, he was the guy that instigated the crazy gang and then came up to Sheffield. And one of the things he did was he brought his Southerners with him, and he brought his entire team up north, which had probably not been done much before. I'm interested, Bob, to find out there is what was so good about Harry in terms of his man management, as it from a leadership perspective?
Well, we called him Harry the Bastard. Well, we did, because a lot of, you could have a row with him in the dressing room about something tactical or whatever, but he was still going to have a pint with you afterwards down the social club. I mean, you talk about man management. One of my memories was when I hadn't been home for about 6 weeks, or 6 to 8 weeks, and we got beat at home. I can't remember who it was against. You might know, you Statos over there. We got beat 1-0 at home. We was sort of going for promotion. We got beat 1-0, and we was absolutely appalling. And he came and he absolutely slaughtered us. I'd already arranged to go home to a family party, and I hadn't been home for 6 weeks. So I'm thinking, as I'm coming off the pitch, we're going to get slaughtered now, and I'm going to be in the morning. And Harry absolutely ripped us to pieces. You didn't run, Bob. You didn't win your headers. You were shit. Trace, you were sloppy. He absolutely killed us right through the team. So he said, you didn't work today, so you're going to come in the morning at 8 o'clock, and you're going to run around the pitch for 45 minutes, because the second 45 minutes was absolutely diabolical. And I'm thinking, I've got to ring home and say I'm not coming home, and I'm not been home for 8 weeks. Well, in that moment when I was in the shower, Dave Bassett come up to me in the shower and tapped me on the shoulder and said, big fella, get yourself off home. You haven't been home for 8 weeks. And I looked at him, I said, Harry, if the lads are running in the morning, I'm going to be in running with them. But that moment that he remembered that I was meant to be going home, and then realising that he'd said coming in the morning, and then come and saw him in the shower, just little things like that, you think, yeah, I'll do anything for this fella. And I would have done. I still speak to Harry on a regular basis, and I just loved him to bits. He'd done everything for me, and he was my mentor. The lads used to call me son of Dave, because they thought I was up his arse all the time. But no, he just looked after me. He made me feel 10 feet tall, and I would have run for a brick wall for him, and hopefully I did.
But he obviously looked after you, and he knew what you needed, which is a real sign of a good leader, where he's got his arm around one people. He might be having a go at another one. He just knows what triggers to pull. What other examples of Dave's man management could you pull out from there, from maybe other players? How did he treat them, and how did that work?
Well, you're spot on there, because some players can't take a bollocking. It doesn't it? It affects them. Jock Bryson. Jock Bryson for me was so underrated. He had everything. He was fit. He could cross. He could score. He could head. He was a manager's dream, really, for a wide player. But Harry always used to slaughter him, and it used to affect Jock physically. Looking at his face, he really sort of brought him down. So that's where we come in as players, and we put our arm around Jock. Well, Jeff Taylor would go and see Jock, and at the end of the day, 2 hours later, Harry would come up to Jock in the social club and buy him a beer, and it's all done. Just so some players can take a pat on the back, some need a bollocking. You get into Dino now and again. If Dino was having a bit of an off day, which wasn't very often, he used to get into him, and Dino looked like he was going to cry sometimes. You know what I mean? But you're right. It's the man management. And I took a lot of that when I went into my coaching. You know, some players need a bollocking, some you can't. You just got to ease up a little bit and deal with every person in a different way, or every player in a different way.
How do you get that right, Bob? How do you start to understand that?
I think a lot of it comes naturally, you know, as being a judge on who you're, like you guys, who you're teaching or who you're coaching, knowing what you can tell them to do, knowing what you think they'll be able to do and getting them to do it. You know, it doesn't always happen. You can have, you know, it's like Mourinho going to Man United. You can have the best players in the world, but if you can't put them into a shape, whatever it is, 4-4-2, and get them to do what you're asking them to do, you've got no chance. The manager's got no chance. And Harry had that. He had that knack. You know, we played in a certain way. We all knew our jobs, and if we changed the plan, he let us know about it. And we didn't change the plan. But sometimes, if it did happen, you was on the back end of a Dave Bassett rollicking, like, you know. So I remember when we used to do a bit of pattern of play, and I'd go and get the ball off, or try and get the ball off Paul Stancliffe or one of the back four players. And if they actually gave it to me, Harry would stop the game and get me down and do 30 press ups. What you going to get the ball off them for? They're going to knock it up to Dean and the Garner. I want you up the other end getting the knockdowns. So I'm going up and down like a stripper's knickers, which I wasn't used to. So I was used to going to get it off the full back turning, trying to look like a bit of a player, throwing a few shapes, you know, giving it large. And that wasn't what we was about. We was getting it forward. You know, you get up and down, win the knockdowns, get it wide to Roberts, get it wide to Bryson, get it to Mitch Ward. They're going to cross it. If Dean and Garner don't score, I'll slaughter them. So we all had a job to do. And nobody, if your system wasn't going to work, and well, proof was in the pudding, wasn't it?
Yeah. What I like there, Bob, just coming back to, is where Harry would slaughter someone, there's a support network amongst Jeff, the assistant manager, and then you guys in the changing room. So it's a network of leaders, not just one.
Absolutely.
How important is that in any organisation, to have a network of leaders rather than just one person driving?
Oh, I think you're spot on there, Alan. I think we had bundles of leaders. You know, we didn't have many captains there in my time. Stan was captain when I turned up. I was lucky enough to captain us at Leicester for 2 or 3 games when Stan was injured. But you had so many other captains, even like, you know, Brian Dean would pull you aside. He was so calming when he spoke to you about your game. And so was Tony Garner. You know, even when Vinny came, you know, Vinny was quite insecure. People think, oh, Vinny Jones is a big hard man. But I used to room with Vinny and travel with him. And he was so insecure about his performances. You know, he'd sit and say, Bob, how do you think I've done? Do you think I've done okay? Do you think Harry would be pleased with me? Now, you wouldn't expect that from Vinny Jones. You think he's just the big I am. And, you know, but so everybody was there to just shift the load, like you say, you know. Chrissy Wilder was great to talk to about football. You know, they all had their little bits and pieces. And some of them were just absolutely, like Carl Bradshaw, you just know that he would put a smile on your face. The Northern lads used to really make me laugh. You know, they were great in their banter. It's a slightly different banter to what it is down south, and I really like that. And so you're right. It's not just about the captain or the assistant manager. It was a great, even going down to Frenchie. If he was injured, you know, to have Frenchie in the dressing room with you day by day and looking after you, he was brilliant. He was a great character. So we had bundles of characters in that era. Absolutely fantastic.
Bob, did Harry Bassett ever make it clear what his sort of negotiables were, in terms of him saying, listen, I expect X, Y, and Z, and did everybody buy into that and just follow that? Or was that something that just sort of happened because of the characters and the strong leaders that you had in the changing room at the time?
No, he had a plan in the system we were playing, you know, the long ball game. You know, a ball from the back, if you could put the ball as a fullback or centre half into the opposition's half, in between the 18-yard box and the touchline, he would call that a reacher. You know,
he loved a channel ball, didn't he?
Oh, channel ball. And if it went out for goal kick, so be it. If it stayed on the pitch and they got there first, we was encouraged not to foul the back four of the opposition. Let them give us a throw-in. Let them give us a corner. Because for every 10 corners that you have in a game, you are owed 1 goal. Statistically, that was his. You know, he had it all worked out. How many forward balls in the last third, you're going to get a cross, how many crosses you're going to get a goal. So it wasn't just a case of lumping it forward. It was a real system that every player bought into. And once you see it working as a player and you start winning games, same as winning and losing, it becomes a habit. And to get rewards out of it, we knew that we had wingers that were going to cross the ball. And if someone was about to cross the ball and checked back and went in midfield, Harry would go absolutely ballistic. Why did you do that? Why didn't you cross it? We've got Brian Dean and Tony Garner in the middle of the park in the 18-yard box. They want service. You see it in every Premiership game now, didn't you? They get down to the box, they turn out, they go back to midfield, back to the back four. It drives me mad. I don't, to be honest with you, I hardly watch any football now because it's so boring. But it's
a really interesting.
There's no shots on goal, is there?
It's a really interesting point, Bob, because Alan and I both coach football. We've both been involved in football for years, and when I was at school, it was very much being coached in a way of get the ball to the fullback and hit the channel. Exactly what you've just described. And despite what you had in your team, that was the way you play. And I think football's evolved a lot, hasn't it? And it's almost now gone to the other nth degree where, regardless of what talent you might have or not have in your team, you're going to play out from the back and you're going to play in a way where you try and actually play. Now, as a central midfielder for you, you've already alluded to the fact that you do want to receive the ball on the turn. You do want to look for options. How did you fit into that system where essentially you were just doing doggies? You were doing doggies, 30, 40 metre doggies on the hope that you might pick up something, a bit of scraps, and then off we go. How did that fit with a player like you that really, as you've already mentioned, didn't really fit with how you wanted to play in wanting to receive and play out from the back of it?
Well, that's where them first 10 games became a problem because, one, I wasn't fit enough to do that job, what Harry wanted, box to box. Most Tuesdays and Wednesdays, we did them types of run, 18-yard box to 18-yard box, especially the midfield players. Toddy could do it. John Gannon could do it. And I had to get up to speed to execute that, what Harry wanted, which was hard for me. Not one, because of my knee, and two, I was 32 years old. But what a lot of people don't know is after training, Derek French would spend hours and hours with me on a one-to-one basis, strengthening me up, working my knee, going in the gym in the afternoons, not going home or playing golf or going to sleep, So there was a lot of hours put in, as well as the training as well, to get up to that style of football. And you had to be fit to do it. I mean, we was bloody fit. I'll give you that. We did put some hours in and mileage. So, like you say, you had to be fit to play that system. So, until I got up to there and saw what was required, I found it very, very difficult, to be honest with you. You
talked there about doing that bit of work away from the lights, putting in the graft and the effort where no one sees after training. How important was that, and how I think what I'm trying to get at is how underrated is that idea of, putting in that extra work to get the reward? Because you're in a dressing room there with a lot of big characters. You don't want to be the receiving end of some harsh banter, I imagine, around the fact you haven't played particularly well. So you've got your own personal pride to think about. But what drives you to put in those hours that other players maybe aren't putting in?
I think it's either in you or it's not in you, innit? It's I've always been a grafter. Whatever I've done, I've always been organised. I've always been disciplined. I think discipline, my dad installed into me. When I went into the furniture factory and I was apprentice under 6 or 7 blokes, I was organised. I was disciplined. I was always on time. I just had a focus really, and I've always been like that. And I think that when I got into difficult situations, I always pull on that. I always just think, what would my dad say now? He'd say, pull your sleeves up, get on with it. Get a smile on your face. Don't let people see you down. You'll come through the other side. And I've always gone with that, and he's always been right. God bless him. If you're looking up there now, hopefully feeling very proud of what happened.
You've obviously got some real core values there, Bob, of graft, punctual, hard work, proper working class values. When you went into coaching, then were those values you took with you and you expected them of other players? And what if players didn't match up to your values that you have? What did you do?
That's a great question. And when I finally got into the coaching side of it, and I was the youth team manager at Brentford for 6 years to learn my trade, and I just took a lot of stuff, what I'd picked up off of Harry, off of Jeff Taylor, some of the managers that I've played under as a player at Brentford. I just took a collection of it really, but I still like to put my own mark on it. And them values that I told you about, you know, if I had 15 apprentices on their first morning, which did happen when they was first left school and started their apprenticeship, and I told them to be in at 8 o'clock, and they was all in except one of them, and I would wait on the corner of the dressing room, and he come bowling down the corridor with his bag over his shoulder on his first day, sort of a bit of a swagger. Oh, I'm a, you know, apprentice footballer now, aren't I? And when he got to me, I said, where have you been? He said, what do you mean? I said, well, you're late. He said, well, it's only 2 minutes past 8. I said, yeah, you're late. So he said, oh, sorry, mate. I said, whoa, I'm not your mate. I'm your gaffer. I said, you turn yourself around, you go home and tell your mum and dad you've just wasted your first day's apprenticeship. He went, what? I said, you go home and tell your mum and dad you've wasted your first day's apprenticeship. He was never late again. You know, so
school, Bob, isn't it?
Yeah, little things like that. You know, when the lads used to clean up the dressing rooms, and I'd already hidden the tin can behind the toilet to see if they'd find it, because anyone can clean the middle of a floor. Corners and edges was my motto, and I used to go mad. I used to call the head apprentice and say, "You ready to go, lads?" He said, "Yes, Gaffer." I said, "Okay, I'll have a quick check around," and I'd go and find a tin can and just throw it in the middle of the dressing room, and walk out and come and see me when you're finished. Just a bit of discipline, really, you know. And the apprentices don't know they're born these days. They don't have to clean the boots. I'm not saying it's right, but it worked. You know, if you talk to most old pros, that's how we did. You know, I respected, even though I wasn't an apprentice, I respected the pros that were been there longer than me. I'd come from non-league, but I still respected them, even though I was a fully grown adult. I still respected them for what they'd done and what they achieved. You know, I didn't have to like them, but I respected them. And I just think a lot of that's gone out of the game these days. So all the models I've talked to you about, that stood me in good stead for my coaching career, through the youth team, the man management of Harry when I worked with the pros. So, you know, it's just been a steady growth of them morals from the kids through to the reserves, through to the first team, through to assistant manager. So just took it along with me, really. And I think you can be really, you know, you can say what you think and to players, and you know what you've got to say to them. But at the end of the day, they might not like to hear it. But I don't think there's many players that wouldn't turn around and say, I respected Bob Booker for what he did and what he did for me. I'd like to think that anyway.
I love that, corners and edges. That's it. As a nice.
Yeah. Anyone can clean the middle of a floor.
Yeah. Tell us a bit about Vinnie Jones, Bob. Vinnie was a big character. You said that you played with him in non-league. He was in the reserves and you were in the first team, and then he followed you up to Bramall Lane as well, didn't he? Tell us a little bit about Vinnie Jones.
Well, Vinnie, we both sort of lived. Vinnie lived in Bedman. I lived just on the outskirts, so we both played for Bedman Social, which was just a local Saturday team, you know, with a rope round a pitch and 2 men and a dog watching. And he always had a bit about him because he had a bit of a quite a tough childhood, parent-wise, and gangs and things like that. You know, he was on the wrong side of the wrong people at some stage. I went to Brentford and he went to Wildstone, and then he finally went off to Wimbledon with Harry for the Crazy Gang. And then obviously we pitched up again at Bramall Lane. But along the way, obviously, he was at Leeds United, so we had some tussles there when we played each other at Bramall Lane and Ellen Road. Like I say, he was a very secure lad, but a great, you know, I remember his first early time at Bramall Lane. I was, when I first came out there, one of the people I did live with was a builder called Keith Palmer. I was stopping at Martin Pike's house in Diggs. And I came down in the morning and he was building his fireplace. And he said, "Oh, you're Bob Booker. You've just signed for Sheffield United." I thought, blimey, I've been recognised. I've only been here 5 minutes. Someone's recognised me. This is a change. And then I got really friendly with his family, and I stayed up there a lot. And he broke his leg on the building site. And straight away, Vinnie was one of the ones that would organise. He organised like a karaoke down at the social club to raise money for Keith Palmer because he wasn't earning for his family. And a lot of them things, people don't see that side of Vinnie Jones. You know, he's a good lad. He's a good lad. I've got a lot of time for him. Still speak to him on the phone now and again. He lives quite close to me now, and very sad once, you know, he lost Tanya, which was really, really sad, you know, on that time. So yeah, got a lot of time for Vinnie, and I'm really proud of what he's achieved and really pleased for him, and, you know, long may it continue.
That's lovely. It just goes to show that sense of belonging again that we talked about. And we've got a phrase, belonging through bonding. Tell us a bit about some of those legendary bonding sessions that you'll have had, which do have a huge impact on results, don't they?
Well, I wouldn't exactly call it bonding. I'd call it getting absolute pissed, bladdered. Like you say, we worked hard, but we played hard. You know, I think that group of players, I'm not sure if it happens too much these days, because players are shipped in coaches and shipped out again, and off they go in their cars, where, you know, I would say at least 80% of the team, not even 100%, we would all socialise together after the game. You know, it might be for an hour, but we was all there. Or, you know, a lot of the wives used to come down sort of in midweek and have lunch with the players and all mixed together. So we really, like you say, we really got that bonding of that real group. It wasn't just the players; it was the wives, it was the kids. You know, it was mixing with the staff and things like that. So it was a massive bond, and it was like, you know, getting on the train and going on the journey. And if you want to jump on it, it's going to be great. If you want to get off and stop at the station, see you later. But we was on a roll, and it was just a great time to be in, a great era, and some lovely people, you know, met even down through the staff, and just it was a real although it was a big football club, I think everybody, I mean, it's a big football club now, but it was a big football club then. Everybody knew everybody, you know. They probably don't know, there's so many staff in a football club now. I mean, when I went to Brighton, we had 4 members of staff. We had the secretary, we had about, I think it was 3 or 4. You know, you go through Brighton at the Amex now, there's 95 people on the office floor. That's just the way it's gone. It's blown up out of all proportion. So yeah, some great bonding sessions. And when we went out and Harry sort of took us out, and, you know, we could let our hair down, and, you know, it used to get a little bit out of hand, but nothing that would hit the papers, you know. I mean, we had a few examples on the plane going over to Marbella where we got chucked off the plane, and when you look at it these days, it seems quite bad, but it was a bit of banter, really. We wasn't doing anything dangerous, or it's one of those, isn't it? You could get away with it then, whereas now you'd be locked up, wouldn't you?
Go on, Bob. There's a story there, isn't there? Tell us a story.
You know the one about on the jetliner?
Go on. What happened on the jetliner?
Well, we got promoted, and Harry, in his wisdom, decided that we would go in 2 groups. So there was me and Stan and Chrissy Wilder, Mitch Ward, Bradders, Billy Whitehurst, David Barnes, and Frenchie. And me, Frenchie, and Stan were meant to be the fathers of the trip, like, you know, look after that lot. And Harry was coming out with Derek Dooley and all the also runs, the other lads. So we get to the airport about 6 bells in the morning. We're on it in the bar, and it's flowing. It's good. We've been promoted. It's a great feeling. And then we get called up for the flight. So we get onto the plane. And I think we're in about the first 6 rows, all of us. So me and Frenchie get to the back row, and the lads are getting on a bit leery, getting the seats. The plane wants to get going, and they had one of these big screens that they watch the telly on in front of it. And Billy Whitehurst and David Barnes decided in their wisdom, they got out a marker, and David Barnes and Billy started to take off Dave Bassett. Get the fucking ball here, get it in the corners. You know, drawing all these arrows on the screen. Yeah, hit the fucking corners. Yeah, second ball. Dino, get in the box. And we're all laughing our heads off. And even the punters on the plane were laughing, to be fair, because they knew that we were Sheffield United. And all of a sudden, I got a tap on the shoulder, and this bloke says to me, he says, I work for British Airways. He said, them screens are worth 10 grand. And I said to Frenchie, I think we've got a problem here. So the air stewardess asked Billy to wipe it off. Of course, he went to wipe it, but it was a permanent marker. It was a permanent marker on this screen with all these arrows and crosses. So Billy then said, give me a scale and a bit of a jiff. I'll get it off. So he's trying to rub it. It's getting worse and worse and worse. So I can see the stewardess getting on the phone, and I'm thinking, she's ringing the old Billy, we got a problem. So all of a sudden, the police come up the steps. Frenchie had a sombrero on, and I had a paper, and he said, kick your head down, son. So I put the paper up and slid down in my chair. Frenchie pulled the sombrero down, And they decided to say, oh, right, you know, they picked out about 3 rows, and I think Whitehurst went, Barnsley went, Chrissy Wilder went, Mitch Ward, Bradders, I think, and they all got carted off the plane, and because they wanted, you know, they're going to miss their slot. So we just about got away with it, which we didn't feel very clever about, because we should have gone with them, really. So they got chucked off, and they got a plane out. I think it was the next day, but we went round the pool the next morning, and me and Frenchie felt a bit guilty. And then they turned up. I went up to get the local paper, and we was on the front page of the Sun. Sheffield United player ejected from jetliner. I think it was even.
I tell you what, Bob. I tell you what. Brave policemen to be chucking off Billy Whitehurst and that names. They must have. What were they? Armed guards, blood and sand.
I tell you what, Al, the funny thing was when we got the Sun in the morning, because I spoke to Chrissy Wilder that night, and he was actually fuming because they were running through the airport, and the paparazzi were trying to chase him to take pictures of them. And the chairman then, Reg Brearley, said, "Just get yourself in a hotel, and we'll get you on the next flight tomorrow." Well, Chrissy Wilder said he finally got to his hotel room and thought, "Oh God, I'm safe at last." And then News at 10 come on, and then he saw the mugshots up on News at 10. And Billy had the ump, because on the pages of the Sun in the morning, you know, like you have your team photo, like where you're all standing up with your arms crossed in your football kit. Billy's one, he was in a suit coming out of an old court case down some steps in Sheffield Court. He said, "They didn't even get me in my football kit. They got me in my suit coming out of court on another case." So, yeah, that stuck with me a little bit. So, yeah, them sort of things. But say that wouldn't happen these days. But we didn't hurt anybody. We wasn't swearing, wasn't abusive. We just had a drink, and you know, it just got a little bit excitable, really.
Yeah, and I can imagine with people like Billy in the changing room, there was a few times that maybe you or other certainly younger players felt like they were walking on eggshells a little bit. And I want to try and explore a little bit something that Alan and I talk about a lot, which is a sort of blame versus responsibility argument that happens obviously in life a lot, and within education, it's something that we really try and connect and get across to our students, that, you know, life's what you make it. You know, take responsibility for what you can control rather than point blame in that. How was that in a changing room full of Billy Whitehursts, Vinnie Joneses, Harry Bassett's? Was there room for blame? Was there room for not taking responsibility?
Well, you couldn't. Harry didn't always have to point the finger. You know, Harry could come into a dressing room at half time, and you're spot on. You would have the likes of, well, I don't think they played together, Vinnie and Billy, but Billy or Vinnie, you know, they would be doing the team talk. They would be pointing the finger, especially if they, you know, when Vinnie was captain, and that was his role. You know, he could point the finger. So sometimes Harry would just come in, and Jeff, and they would just stand in the corner, you know, and Carl Bradshaw might have someone up by the throat up against the wall, you know. And it happened, you know, but you let that flow, because that's what you want, isn't it? You know, it's controlled aggression. You know, when you're there for that 90 minutes of that football game, or then 3 hours, that's got to be done. Once you're away from the football club, it doesn't mean you're going to mix socially with every player that you come across. Yeah, we did at a lot of stages. But I've been in football teams where for 90 minutes, you've got to tell people what it is. It doesn't mean you're going to be the best mate after the game and have a drink with them all the time. You go away your separate lives, you know. So, yeah, Billy could do that. You know, Mark Morris could do that. He could point the finger. I used to do a fair bit when I could, like, you know, Vinny. Even the likes of Dino could get the ump and start pointing the finger, and if he wasn't getting the service. So, you know, if they weren't getting the service, Dean and the Garner, they let you know about it. You know, you didn't cross the ball. You had a chance to cross it. Why didn't you cross it? Just little things like that. It's got to be said. Then it's out in the open, and nobody needs to hide, do they? You know, you don't want people saying, "Oh, going in the toilets, oh, he hasn't crossed the ball for me." Get it out there. You know, you're in a working environment for that 90 minutes to get a result, and that's what it's all about at the end of the day, is getting 3 points. And then if you want to fall out afterwards and punch the shit out of each other, then so be it. But get the result first. How
important is honesty, Bob, in an environment like that? And then also, you know, you've took on coaching since then and working with youngsters. You've done it in a very different way, being a driving instructor and coaching people through that. How important is being honest with the people you're working with?
Paramount, absolutely paramount. As a coach, when I got into coaching, or even in some teams I played in, you could smell and feel the poison if there was a little bit of a poison group about. And once you get a bit of poison in a dressing room, And players, if there's any players listening to that, they know what I mean by poison. You know, you get a little click, 2 or 3 players just, they're not, they might not be in the team, so they try and suck everybody else into it. So I can't remember much poison at Sheffield United when I was in that group of players, because everybody knew exactly how everybody was thinking. There weren't no cliques. And once you do get that, when you get them cliques in football clubs, in dressing rooms, there's only one result, and that's the managers going, because players have got so much power these days to managers, and the way groups go about their business, players have a lot of power. I'm not saying it's always the right way to coach and manage, ruling by fear, if you want to call it that, but Harry didn't rule by fear. You knew he was the boss, but you knew that you could have a pint with him after a game. There was work and play, and that's the balance of man management. And I would know that I've seen Chrissy Wilder, and I speak to him, and I know the way he works, and I know the players would think exactly the same about him. They know he's the gaffer, but they know that when they're winning and celebrating, he'll be there with them, and he expects the same. If he's struggling now, he needs them players with him now. He doesn't need groups of players going off, we're not doing that right, we're not winning games. He needs them to be on side with him. And I'm pretty sure, I would think they definitely are, knowing that group of players and the way they're still trying to play. So, yeah, there's no hiding places. Get it all out there so everybody knows where they stand.
I think you can apply that to any organisation, Bob, as well. It's not just a football club, it's a school, it's a business, it's anything, any sort of cliques and poison, and you're on to a loser, aren't you? I'm interested now if how you've come out of football. What transferable skills did you have then from football that you took into your driving instructor business? And the difference is unbelievable, but give us some similarities between the two.
Well, it's like you touched on earlier. It is a form of coaching, but it's on a one-to-one basis now, rather than a group session. So it was my wife's idea, to be fair, because once I left Brighton and you're sort of sitting around for the phone to go, and you might get another job for a manager that you used to work for, and I worked under a few at Brighton, about 7, I think it was. That when that phone call doesn't come, you got to start thinking, well, football's not going to last forever. You're in a bubble when you're in football, and once you're out that bubble, it's quite worrying. Thinking, what am I going to do? For me, going back to my childhood and doing an apprenticeship in a factory, that stood me in good stead, because I've not been working as a driving instructor all in lockdown for nearly a year now. So I've been out and sort of done some odd jobs for people and helped them out. So I can do that because I'd already had that grounding as an apprentice in a furniture factory. So a lot of players go straight from school, straight into pro football, and that's all they know. So it stood me in good stead. I think on the driving side of it, once I did the training, I think the man management and being a people person, which I like to think I am, my wife said, you are made for that job. Because, every character is different, isn't it? Whether it's a girl or boy, you're not only a driving instructor, I'm a bloody counsellor. And you, like you say, as soon as I take on that new person, I find out, are they shy? Do they like football? What's their interest? Can I bring the best out of them? Can I swear at them? Are they going to handle it? You get to know what they're like after about a month. You start to work out what sort of character they are. When someone's got a problem and I pull over the side and say, what, there's something wrong. You're not quite yourself today. Might be a young girl. Oh, I've got a problem. What's that? I'm pregnant. Right. Okay. Does your boyfriend know? No. Does your mum and dad know? No. Right. We have got a bit of a problem here. So we're now sitting there for half an hour. I'm not teaching her to drive, but I'm being a man management and a counsellor, because that's what she needs, because she's got no one else to go to. Yeah. And I find that really, well, not that particular case, but every case is different. Every person's different. They've got a different personality. It might be a lad that thinks he can drive and he can't. So that one I've got to shut down, and tell him that he's not Billy Bollocks and thinks he's a driver. So, I ain't got to put my arm around him. I've got to give him a bit of a volleying, to make him realise that he's driving a killing machine. So I think that's where it stood me in good stead, and I absolutely love it. It's the next best thing. And once you're out of football, which I have been now for sort of 5 or 6 years, you start to realise that there is life outside of football. At first, you don't. When you're in it and you're told you've got to retire, or you've had the sack at Brighton when I left there as assistant manager, it comes a bit of a shock, you know, and you think, what am I going to do? But now you're out of it. I sort of still work down at Brighton Football Club now doing hospitality and media work. And I love it because I can come away and it doesn't affect my social life or my livelihood. Say my livelihood, I mean, I get paid for it, but my driving's my job. But I can shut the door and switch off from it, where when you're in the game, if we got beat on a Saturday, my wife knows that we're not going out. That's the way it is, because you're back in Sunday morning, your mind's always going, you know, you don't switch off. So, because it's all about winning football games. If you're not winning football games, it ain't going to happen. So I think I've got a nice balance. I've got a nice balance with it. And, you know, so I really enjoy it. But you're right, it is being a people's person, man management, and it's a form of coaching, and there's an end result. You know, to get someone through their driving test is great. You know, you leave them, you tell them to be safe for the rest of their lives. You've taught them a new skill, and then you move on to the next one. So you know, I love it. I really enjoy it.
I love that, Bob. It's one of our catchphrases from my wife, actually, is time invested in people is never, ever wasted time. And when you're a driver instructor, that's something that you do on an individual level every single day, and you get the best from them by making a relationship with them. So that's brilliant, Bob. I love how this transfers those skills across.
I tell you what, everybody remembers their driving instructor, right?
Yeah,
it's a big part of your life, isn't it? Learning to drive in England. It gives you a lot of freedom as a youngster. And I certainly remember mine really, really well, and the banter I used to have with him.
Yeah, and I've met some great people. You know, the parents. You know, you end up. I'll get them involved in it because, you know, a lot of the kids go home, they don't even say they've had a driving lesson or what was it like today. But I encourage the parents to get involved as well because they can play a massive part. And to be fair, in the lockdown, when we had to shut down, you know, I had a lot of parents ring me up and saying we can't wait to get back driving because my child or my boy or girl is such a different person once they've had a driving lesson. They come home, they're buzzing, they've got a smile on their face, and that gives you a buzz, doesn't it? You know, it's another buzz of the job. That, blimey, you know, and I've been part of that, so you know that makes me proud with the job as well. So
yeah, good man, Bob. Good man, Bob.
Yeah.
But we're going to wind it down now, Bob, with some quick fire questions, and I'm going to start off. I'm going to change it slightly because it's for you, Bob, and I'm a blade, and I want to hear this. So, your top three guys from your Sheffield United era who you want to go out for a meal with now to shoot the talk and reminisce. Who would they be? Your top three?
What, players or people?
Anybody. It can be anybody associated with the club.
Oh, blimey. God bless him. I'd love to go and sit and have a meal with Derek Dooley again.
Yeah.
He was, you know, that man was just, yeah, it was like Harry, really. It was just amazing. And I never forget the story with Derek because they'd offered me another contract and I went and knocked on his door and I opened the door and he said, what do you want? There's no more money. That's it. And I said, no, Derek, I've just come to thank you for giving me another contract at Sheffield United. And he started crying. And he said, and he did. He started crying. He welled up and he said, I've never had a professional footballer come to me and say thank you for a contract. But that's what it meant to me. So I'd love to just, we used to go to, is it El Carretto's, a little restaurant? It's not down there, I think, on the corner. We used to go in there and have a bottle of wine, me, Derek Dooley and Derek French, you know, sit and have a pasta and a bottle of wine. So definitely Derek Dooley. I would like to sort of meet up with, well, all of them really, but Brian Dean. I mean, I don't know what it is, but every time I've been on holiday in certain places without knowing, even up to this day, we end up going to the same places and he thinks I'm stalking him. I was leaning out this villa in America and he comes strolling through this complex and I said, Dino. And then where else was it? I think Marbella, we bumped into each other, America. There was a couple of others. He's stalking me. Yeah. So, but I find Brian really interesting and a lovely fella to sit down to have a meal with. Derek Dooley, Brian Dean, friendship. Well, really, also Joe Elliott from Def Leppard.
All right. That's the second Def Leppard reference in our podcast now, Keith.
Yeah. No, I'm good friends with Joe Elliott, which was quite a strange one, really. I'll tell you quickly. before I even came to Sheffield United, back in the 80s, I became a Def Leppard fan. And they came over from America and they played at the Hammersmith Odeon. And we went to see them, me and my mates, and they had all Union Jacks on, and we was really into them. And then I came to Sheffield United, not knowing anything about him football-wise. And after one game, God bless him, Dave Kilner, who was the presenter, he said, "Oh, Joe Elliott read your profile and he knows you like Def Leppard. He wants to come and meet you." And I went, "Wants to come and meet me? Joe Elliott?" He went, "Yeah." So Joe Elliott came into the players' lounge and we struck up a friendship, and he put me on his mailing list, and I had all these box sets and everything coming from Def Leppard, all this memorabilia, and we really hit it off, me and Joe. And in fact, when I first got married, I invited him to my wedding, and he drove over from Ireland, and I got him in a hotel where all the Sheffield United lads were staying, and I went down to see him the night before my wedding, and he presented me with a platinum disc for one of their albums, all framed as a wedding present. And then he came to my wedding. He said, "What do I have to wear, Bob?" I said, "You're a fucking rock star, Joe. You can wear what you want, mate." So he turned up in his attire, and he had a good drink and everything. And we went back to the hotel, and there was a piano in reception. And he got on it, and a few of the players were around it, and he was playing a few songs. And Jobsworth security man come over and says, "Excuse me, sir, you can't play that piano." And he turned and he said, "If it was fucking Elton John, you'd let him. Now fuck off." He done about an half-hour set. So I've been all over the world following Def Leppard, and Joe's invited me all around the world and to see him when they're touring. So still speak to Joe. So I'd love to sit down and Joe, because we never get the time because they're always working. So great lad, very passionate about his football club. That's probably my top three.
Oh, cheers, Bob.
Tell us who's the most physical player you've faced as an opponent. Who's the toughest, most physical player you played against?
Who's the hardest? Come on, who's the hardest?
Who's the hardest? That's the one.
I would say Mark Hughes. Mark Hughes. When I played centre half, we played him in the cup. My brother-in-law was an ex-professional at Watford in Bolton, and he played centre half. He said, "You've got to watch Hughesy, because he's going to stamp on your toes. He's going to grab your bollocks. He's going to pinch you. He's going to elbow you in the ribs when you're marking him at corners. Don't get too tight to him, because he'll want to spin you." I mean, he had legs, he had thighs like that, Mark Hughes, absolutely massive. So I'll say he was, as a centre forward, he was probably the toughest. Midfield-wise, the clashes against Vinny, really. He's a hard player, and I mean, really, really hard. I don't know if you remember the game where Harry said, "I want you to get into Peter Reid against Man City away."
Got sent off after 2 minutes.
Yeah, and we kicked off, and he two-footed Peter Reid and got sent off. And Harry said, I told you to get into him, not fucking get sent off. Just get into him." So he was tough, but he always hates the game against Leeds United at Bramall Lane, where I ended up getting man of the match and got the champagne. And it was billed in the News of the World the day before, macho mates, because we was mates, and it was going to be the big clash at Bramall Lane, 30-odd thousand. And I got the champagne, and I kept texting him about it, and he wasn't very happy. "You weren't man of the match." "Well, I've got the champagne now, Vinny, to prove it. It's on my sideboard now. I've got the champagne." But I let my guard down, because about a month later we played away at Ellen Road towards the end of the season, and he managed to get into the dressing room before we turned up, and he cut all my kit up. And he cut all my kit up when it was hanging up on the clothes on the peg, and he put deep beat in my slip. So when I put my slip on, my bollocks were on fire. So, and he cut all my laces in my boots. So he got his own back. So my kit was in bits on the bench, and my boots were in bits, and I had deep beat in my slip. So that was the type of bloke he was. Good lad. So Vinny, he was tough. He was tough. Trying to think of Graham Souness. I played against Graham Souness. He was one. Steve McMahon. But Sheffield United days, Mark Hughes, when we played United, he was tough. Tough player, very tough.
Quality, Bob. Listen, it's been brilliant to speak to you. Really appreciate your honesty, and your stories are fantastic. Love them. Love hearing you speak and tell us a little bit about that Blade squad from the early 90s and some of the names you mentioned there and their leadership, Wilder, Bassett, Vinnie Jones, I'm sure a lot of our listeners can connect with. So thanks a lot for your time, Bob. Hugely appreciated.
I heard you mention you can always give me book a mention because that's still going strong, and that's something that I'm really proud of. And the book, because I think people, and you probably read some of it. It's not like your modern day footballer about how many houses you got or how much money you got. It's what it was like to football. Can play a big part in your life. Going through depression. Getting divorced, not having any money, etc. And how you're going to keep earning to pay your mortgage. So I think it's more of a football life story rather than a documentary about this is what I've got. It's a real life story. So I'm very, very proud of it, and it tells a nice story. So I'm glad you got it, boys, and
yeah, we are.
Enjoy. Yeah,
that was a gift from my uncle actually last Christmas.
Was it?
It was, yeah. So the book's called Who Are. Can you tell our listeners where they can find that, or who published it, so we can give it a quick search?
Yeah, you can still get it in the club shop at Sheffield United. It's still ticking on nicely. I went up there when it first got done. Greville Waterman, who's a big Brentford fan, rang me up one day and said, "Oh, I want to do a story about it." And I thought, "Story about me? There's not much of a story there." He said, "Well, you come from non-league. You ended up playing in the first division. You went to Sheffield United late in your career. You was club captain there. You've been assistant manager. You've been a coach. You've been at three different football clubs. I think it'd make a nice story." So we went for it, and it took about 18 months to do. I went up to London and sat down, a bit like we are now, really. Just stuck a dictaphone in front of me and asked me stories, and then he done the bit of putting it all together. So we was really glad the way it come together. So we went and done a few signing sessions up at Smith's and GT Sports in Sheffield, and a couple in the club shop, and it went really, went much more. I wasn't doing it to make any money. I did it because it's something nice to keep, and my dad would have been proud of it to have the story in book form. It's all there. So you can still get it at the club shop. You can get it on Amazon. So, I still get the odd tweet. Can you send me a book signed and things like that? So it's still out there. It's ticking along nicely. So I'm still getting a few royalties. I can pay a few bills. So it's going along nicely. But yeah, I'm really proud of it. It sits on the unit light, and you think, blimey, there's your story there. And like now and again, I do get it out and just have a browse through, and it brings it all back. So it's really, really, really proud of it.
Good man, and so you should be. And like you say, seeing that on a bookshelf must be a little bit surreal at times. Your life in paper.
Well, it was. Yeah, it was a bit difficult at first because I was at Brighton when I did it, and we were looking for the cover of the book, which you've seen the picture.
Yeah.
And I chose that picture, and Brighton. I didn't know whether Brighton were going to say, "Why are you wearing red and white? Why can't you have one of each?" But that photo particularly was my first game in the first division against Liverpool. And there was a break in play, and I turned to the side while someone was getting treated, and I spotted my dad in the crowd. So that picture on the front of that book is me smiling at my dad, and that makes me very, very, very happy. And as for who are, well, it had to be, didn't it? We kept thinking about a name, from factory floor to football pitch or things like that. I just said it's just got to be who are, the Bob Booker story, plain and simple. So. The picture on the back was the one that they was going to put on, but my wife said I looked like a porn star, so we changed that. So we went for the one looking at my dad, which I think is quite nice to look at. So that's how it happened. Yeah,
certainly is really apt. And thanks a lot for your time, Bob. Thoroughly appreciate it.
Been good, lads, and I envy you a little bit out there in your lovely parts of the world in the sunshine. 25 degrees, bloody hell, it's about 6 here.
I'll tell you what, it's just started absolutely hammering it down now from that bright sunshine you saw earlier. That's the other side of living in tropical climes.
It is quite sunny. You can just see out the back, look, you see the fields.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, but it's quite fresh out there. But now you keep up the good work, you guys. You're doing a great job, especially that far away. So really appreciate you getting in contact with me, and it's been a pleasure. So anything in the future, just give us a call, and it's really nice to reminisce and keep it going. So. Top men, thanks very much. Top blades.
Cheers, Bob. Top man. Yeah, guys, search Infinite Leaders live on YouTube and IGTV. We're on all popular podcast platforms as well, and you can find us as ever at theinfinitelearners.com. Please press review, press subscribe, leave a review, and let us know if you're enjoying our pods. Take it easy, guys. See you next time.